Before all this, I can't remember the last time I saw a payphone in person. When you watch older movies, you're reminded of just how commonplace they were. But now, they're obsolete. Relics of the past that are scattered far and few between. So naturally, it caught my eye when I spotted one as I was walking home from work. Even typing "spotted one" sounds like I came across some wild animal. That's how it felt though, like I was suddenly in enemy territory. A walk I've made hundreds of times before had an intruder. It was just odd enough to stump me. I stood in the dark, staring down the payphone like I was waiting for it to move. Never mind the cold, never mind the lingering mist or the sound of distant sirens. The payphone had stolen all my focus. Even still, it looked wholly unremarkable. It was just a typical payphone. Thanks to the payphone's black chassis blending in with the darkness around it, the phone itself seemed to be floating. The brightly lit sign above it, which simply read "phone," created an ominous glow. The threads of light landed on the cold and wet concrete like a hand reaching out to me. That first time I saw it, despite the tightness in my chest, I eventually pulled myself from its spell. I knew that it hadn't been there before, but there wasn't anything to be done about it. Odd, sure, but it had nothing to do with me. It faded into obscurity when, upon walking to work the next morning, it had vanished, only the faint outline of dirt to prove it was ever there at all. A few days went by before I saw the next one while out doing some errands. It was far enough in the distance that I almost didn't notice it, which makes me wonder if I had been in the proximity of other ones and just didn't see them. It loomed in the distance, the same style of payphone, simple and clean, though it was daytime, so the light was off. It was sitting outside my local mall. As people walked by, momentarily obscuring the payphone from view, their heads would turn to look at it, which was comforting, I suppose, the confirmation that I wasn't just seeing things. A few people even stopped and took pictures of the phone. After a few minutes of watching people messing with the phone, I started to feel like a creep just standing there, so I left, which meant I missed all the commotion. The next day, everyone at work was talking about an incident that took place at the mall. From the fragmented whispers I heard throughout the day, I learned that a woman had suffered some kind of psychosis. People gathered around her when she started shouting. Her whole body was shaking, and her eyes were darting all over the place. Everyone on the scene said they initially assumed the woman was on drugs, and so they just tried to calm her down. Cops were called, but before they could arrive, well, this was described in several ways, but the one that stuck with me is that she mangled herself, clawing at her skin with all the desperation of the living dead trying to escape their graves. By the time the cops had restrained her, her fingernails had been bent and chipped. People said that she dug into her so deeply that you could see her organs. I scoffed that off at first, but after what I've seen, that carnage seems tame. The story was quite the buzz for a while. Eventually, the woman was released from observation, and an official statement was released. They called it an episode of hysteria and said that the woman couldn't recall any of it, though with a little digging into online gossip forums for our little community, those who knew the woman prior claimed she remained disturbed. She had isolated herself, only ever speaking in low, nonsensical mumblings. By the time this event started to trickle out of the news cycle, I had completely forgotten about the phones. It wasn't until a bout of melancholy convinced me to take a late-night stroll that I would get a good look at another phone. Only the dark sky was keeping me company as I trotted around the outskirts of the local park. It was rare in my city to be able to grab a moment of peace and quiet, so I was enjoying the sound of my sneakers against the pavement. A slow and repetitive tapping, only interrupted by the occasional horn honk somewhere in the distance. It was almost cruel, though, how close I was to calling it a night before the phone reared its ugly head. Another stare down, this time from just across the street. Licks of steam rolled across the oily-looking road, dancing the thin veil around the base of the phone. It was just me and the phone, staring each other down. I could swear somewhere in the back of my mind I could hear it ringing. Or maybe it was just my brain filling in the silence, trying to make sense of the intruder. Just me and the phone, until it wasn't. A stranger appeared in my peripheral vision, and I, almost instinctively, stepped back further into the darkness. I was hopeful that he might walk right past the phone, but morbid curiosity prayed that he wouldn't. That prayer was answered as I watched the man reach out and pluck the phone from its receiver. He lifted the dark plastic to his ear and mumbled into it. Then he was still. Seconds ticked by, and the ethereal ringing of a call answered. Focus fixated on his back, waiting for him to move. Then, he reached down and placed the phone back where it had been resting. He turned to look across the street, right at me. Like a cornered animal, my body retreated further until it couldn't anymore, pressing back against the chest-high wrought iron fence. The spikes on top poked into my back like Roman pikemen pushing me towards the lion. The man stood there, glaring across the street, the payphone barely visible beyond his frame. Then, movement. Stepping forward, his frame dipped every so slightly as he stepped off the curb and crossed the street. My heart raced as he took up more and more of my vision, closing in on me. Words failed to escape my lips, and I could only move in small, cautious steps. It all just felt alien. My brain was untrained on this specific series of events, and so it stuttered. When he stood nearly right in front of me, the features of his face obscured in the dark, I managed to shuffle my body quickly to the side. He turned his head to continue looking at me, the small glinting white pearls seemingly staring right through me. What did it say? I managed to meek out. Some part of me must have known, even in that moment. I didn't ask him what they said, as if I was referring to the person on the other end of the line. I said it, like the phone itself had spoken to him. It didn't matter how I phrased it, his response was not one crafted with words. No. His reply was to look back towards the park. He gazed into the stretch of darkness and reeled his head back. My whole body lurched back as I heard the first thud. That lurch was enough to snap me from my trance. I quickly yelped and started moving towards the man, a futile attempt to restrain him. The fabric of his jacket was like silk as it slipped through the grip of my fingers, his head pressed onto the gate's spike. This time there was no thud. It was like a soaked clump of paper towels being squeezed. Wet. The sound was wet. The fence was wet. With a strength and will that I can't fathom, he had slammed his forehead onto the spike and impaled himself. I can't tell you that the iron of the fence became slick with his blood, but I knew. I can't tell you how his face had caved in around the site of impact, but I knew. His body was shrouded in the dark, hunched away from the streetlights, but I knew all of it. I knew the clumps of juice and pulp were trying to squeeze through the cracks on his face. And when his body slumped down and his back bent unnaturally towards the fence, his body was still being held up by the spike in his skull like a wet towel. I knew I had to leave. He was gone probably as soon as the fence worked its way past the bone. There was no helping him, or maybe I'm just making excuses. Turning to run home, my view swept the street over, and of course the payphone had made its exit, carried away by rolling steam. My run home was a dream, a moment that faded away before I grabbed onto it. It felt like as soon as I turned away from the man, I found myself in my apartment, hunched over the toilet. Despite never seeing the details of his ruin, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Each visualization, every detail, manifested into a dry, heaving scream, into rippling water. Fingers gripped the side of the bowl. Now and again, I could feel the fabric slipping along my fingertips. I spent the night in that bathroom, a towel draped over my shoulders for warmth. That room was safe. I could see all of it, and I knew it was just me in there. But everything outside, that all felt new again, uncertain. I had to leave eventually. The world doesn't stop turning for anyone. For me, it did spin differently. There were these words inside of me, things I wanted to tell people. These words failed to manifest. The news cycle became heavier over the following days. First reporting on the man found by the park, still pinned to the fence. But others followed, bodies found, mutilated in various ways. Sightings of the payphone were sparse. At the very least, It wasn't specifically targeting me. Small comforts. It would be there, though, sitting outside a supermarket, hiding in the corner of a parking garage, even sitting inside closed shops, just looming beyond the pane of glass, resting in the dark. Every time I saw it, my heart would seize up. I kept expecting to hear them ring, to call out to me. That expectation echoed in the back of my mind, an ethereal chiming, a sailor to the song in the waves. There were only 2 other instances where I had spotted someone falling victim to the payphones. When I spotted the woman standing on the side of the overpass above me, the sun baking her flat face and vibrant outfit, I knew what was coming. Still, I watched her frame leaning forward until tipping over the edge. She became a blur, darting past my vision before a sick smack rang out. The noise was so similar to when the man smashed his face on the fence. Luckily, I was spared the sight of her carnage as she landed obscured by a nearby home. The intangible ringing lifted my gaze, and sure enough, the boxy payphone loomed, gleaming in the sun, lording over me a taunt. It all began and ended so fast that it feels like my mind struggles to recall the details, despite how heavy it weighed on my chest. The next instance, however, I was not blessed with such brevity. Life had to continue. Bills needed to be paid, and I had even started picking up extra hours at work. My office felt safe, even with all the mumblings from coworkers about the rash of suicides in town. I knew if I were sitting at my chair at work, staring at my computer, I wouldn't be able to spot any phones. On one of the days I volunteered to go in, I ended up leaving fairly early. It wasn't often I got out of work while the sun was still up. Sometimes I forget how alive the city can be, especially after the phones started appearing. But hearing people talking and laughing, birds chirping, and vendors shouting, it was refreshing, if only for just long enough. The walk home goes by a construction site. Normally, it's just an unfinished building in the dark as everyone has gone home. But on that day, it was singing. It was occupied by construction workers going about their job. I could swear they never make progress on finishing the building. I was surprised by how many people were working. As my eyes bounced from one section of the building to another, I could nearly feel the hook pierce my cheek. The black iron of the payphone had caught me. It sat just 1 story up from the ground floor, far enough into the unfinished building that it was cast in a shadow. Out of the corner of my eye, another fish swam towards the phone. I was across the street, cut off from the building by a constant stream of traffic. I could feel what was going to happen before the construction worker took the bait. My heart sputtered and wrenched as the construction site buzzed with life. Table saws whirred as workers sliced through planks of wood, and still the man got closer. The heavy thunk of pneumatic nail guns shooting nails into the structure like butter, and still he approached. All the equipment is being moved around. Heavy boards, metal pipes, electrical wiring, and people not paying attention. All of it was a chorus, mocking me. It sang so loud that none of my screams were ever going to reach him. No matter how much I waved my arms, how loud I yelled, how narrow of an opening in traffic I looked for, he lifted the phone to his ear. Something about the man shifted. His posture dropped a bit, as if it had been taken from him. With the phone to the receiver again, he started moving. I walked alongside him, across the street, still hooting and hollering. My breath kept catching in my throat, but I was getting attention though. People were paying attention, but they were watching me. I was just some crazy guy yelling. They weren't watching the worker as he trotted through a set of unfinished doorways, still visible through the network of scaffolding. He reached a makeshift plywood table and retrieved a power tool. His motions were fluid, not a hint of hesitation or fear, silky smooth. I couldn't even hear the saw buzzing to life, but I recognized the shape of it, and carnage played out in my head before it happened. I wasn't there, but in my mind I was standing right next to him. In my head, I saw him straighten his posture, could practically see the vein on his neck throbbing, calling out to the shuddering metal blade. The teeth easily buckled the man's skin, ripping through as he gently applied pressure. not swaying an inch to his devotion. One tooth after another ripped layer after layer, slicing down to the bone where it began to chip away, lubricated by his own blood. Red would pour down his vest until it pooled around dark black boots. People had taken notice and were running towards him. It was far too late, though. His hands were slick with blood before his body became too weak to hold the tool anymore. Fingers loosened, and it fell to the ground, vibrating across the floor until someone else scooped it up. With everyone finally turning their focus to the construction site, I was free from my observation and managed to slip away. There was nothing I could do, of course, but in my head, I felt people would blame me or think I had something to do with it. My chest was on fire by the time I got home. The images of him pressing the saw through bone, head shaking ever so slightly from the vibration. Later reports said he had caused an almost inhuman amount of damage to himself, like all his mental blocks had been removed, and his only function was to desecrate himself. These thoughts became constant. Not just him, but the girl who jumped and the man who impaled himself. They were all static in the back of my head that I couldn't get rid of. A distant ringing that only seemed to grow louder the more I tried to ignore it. The phones appeared more frequently. It had to be that they were taunting me at that point. Whenever I saw one, my fingers would twitch, like the damn things had strings on me, pulling me to them. In my heart, the conclusion was foregone. One day I wouldn't be able to resist. I could feel it. I need to know what they had heard. What made them do that? How could I find out without it killing me, or I guess, without me killing me? Then I asked myself, is it the payphone itself, or what's on the line? Why the need for a payphone to deliver the message, whatever it was? Everyone has a phone in their pockets, so why not just dial out to everyone and hope some of them pick up? A silly, stupid gamble was formulated. All it took was a short trip to the store and some time waiting for a phone to show up. That didn't take long, though. Poetically, it appeared where I had seen the first one. Some nightly walk home, some black box sitting just across the street. The ringing in the back of my mind was deafening, unheard but somehow still so loud. It drowned out all other thoughts, filling my cup and spilling over until nothing was left. I wondered if that's how the others felt, like their bodies and minds were emptied out, and the only thing left was a siren's call. Standing in its proximity, there was the sensation of strings tugging at me, like my nerves were firing off, conducting me forward. The first step felt like breaking through glass, shattering a barrier I didn't know was there. Each subsequent step forward was easier than the last, the eroding of my willpower measured in inches. That ethereal ringing got louder and louder, without ever making so much as a whisper. Fear manifested in small beads of sweat on my skin, animal instinct telling me to run. The night's cool offering of air brushed against those beads and wafted a blanket of cold, like silk. Fingers hovered an inch or so away from the phone. The phantom ringing ceased. The phone no longer needed to sing. It had me. Pulling the phone loose, it felt so light and harmless, like there was really nothing inside, just the black plastic shell. In my free hand, while I still had the mind to do so, I turned on the cell phone. Not my cell phone, mind you. Just some cheap prepaid brick. Thing didn't even have a touch screen. It was nostalgic in its own right. Fingers pressed down on rubber buttons, and the burner phone called out to my actual cell phone, still resting in my pocket. Like a clown, I juggled through these 3 phones until my setup was ready. The payphone's earpiece rested against the burner phone's piece so that anything the payphone had to say could be heard on the other line, my cell phone. Taking a step back, my body itched with a nervous anticipation. My cell phone lifted until I pressed the cold device up to my ear and listened. I can't explain fully the way my body tensed up, like everything was being pulled inward. Still though, I felt lighter too, emptied out. The voice from the other line dug deep into my brain the moment I heard it. Silky daggers cutting through my free will, severing the present from my consciousness. A heart thudded in time with the universe, though I'm not confident that it was my own. Like you, There was a preconception in my head of what I'd hear when I picked up the phone, so it's only natural that I was completely mistaken. There was no humming of static that activated me like a sleeper cell agent. There was no deep and demonic mumbling played in reverse that cast a wicked spell on me. No monotonous Russian speaking a series of numbers. Nothing all that strange at all, but I remember every word. "Hey son, I'm just calling to check up on you." Her voice was smooth and kind, an aging mother holding the phone just a tad too close to her face. It was easy to imagine cherry red lips and a large pair of glasses, really comfortable like. "We just got back from a little grocery run, had to get more meat," she continued, going on about the facets of her day. Because of the setup, I wasn't able to respond, though I don't know what I would have said. Maybe I was meant to only listen. "There were some crazy deals there, so we picked up a couple extra." A moment of silence rested in my phone, like she was taking a difficult breath. "So if you need any, we'd be happy to give you some." There was the distant sound of shuffling and the clashing of dishes, the sounds of busy work. "Anyways, I was just thinking about you and, well, call me back whenever you can. I love you, son." She finished before a soft click ended our one-sided conversation. Slow and methodical, I stepped back to the booth and returned the phone at its receiver. The burner was left on top of it, a useless relic. Standing there trying to assess myself, all I could muster was hollowed out. That phone call had drained any sensations of fullness within me. My body felt limp. One shoulder drifted down more than the other, and all of me, from buckled knees to slouching spine, wanted to buckle. As I turned away from the payphone, I couldn't help but think of my mother. She had been sick for a very long time. Through this sickness, she would call nearly every day, and I was her lifeline. Her little pinprick of normalcy she had left. Every time, I would pick up. Never missed a beat. It wasn't easy. Often she'd only have bad news. Often I would feel drained. But I picked up. I knew that she needed me. Then one day, I was just so tired. Standing there, looking down the street, I thought about that phone call. Thought about how I just stared at her name on the screen, letting it ring, feeling like I just didn't have the energy to do it. Allowing myself just once to rest instead. That empty street, part of the bus route, but not a single stop on the street itself. So I knew the bus I saw in the distance would just keep rolling on by. It drew closer as I envisioned my mother's call going dark. The last call she was ever going to make. Not even so much as a voicemail was left. I always wondered what my mom was going to tell me. I shudder at the thought that she was calling me for help, or that she knew it was her time and she wanted to say goodbye. The voice on the payphone was not my mother's, but it made me think of my mom, until that's all I could think about. Watching the bus getting closer, all emptied out and filled solely with that misery. The first impulsive thought that popped into my head stuck like glue. One foot drifted off the edge of the curb as the bus drew close, headlights wrapping me. The same fog that made the roads slick drifting in my face. And as the bus approached me, I was able to pull back, just enough to avoid the impact, and snap myself out of the trance. The still air filled my lungs as I desperately heaved myself back into consciousness, wrangling for sanity. Fingers clutched at my chest, my whole body vibrated so intensely, I couldn't tell if I was crying or about to vomit. I must have been right to some degree. Transferring the audio from one medium to another via the burner phone, I think, lessened the effect. Or I should say, delayed the full impact of it. I spent a while on the street before managing to drag myself home. From then on, however, I could always feel it. Little things digging away at me faster than I could fill back up. Every time it got quiet enough, there would be a ringing, and I would think about my mom. Anytime that quiet came around and I saw something that might spark a morbid thought, my ability to resist it withered a little more. Scissors, pencils, traffic, other people, water, heights. Everything became a ringing, a call from deep within that is begging to be picked up. And not for much longer will I be able to resist answering, that sinking terror clinging to every thought. Ever since picking up that phone, more and more I find myself thinking about how empty my life is, and I can't help but think, what if I had just picked up her call? What if she needs me?